Hello, and this is the second recording and screen recording of the other five terms for general recording and compression.
Yeah, not necessarily five.
Not necessarily terms, just techniques.
Yeah, techniques, but could be construed as terms as well. Okay, so we're going to be looking at compressors.
Yes.
In this video, because that's what we're going to be using instead of automation. Right, the compressor on Logic can be found on one of the inserts. We've got it up already, but I'll just quickly show you where it is. So if you go down to Dynamics, Compressor, and there's only one there, the stereo compressor there. But we've already got one up, so we'll just click on that. All right, here's our compressor. Luke, do you want to tell us about... well, try and give us a basic sort of understanding of what the compressor is and what it does.
First of all, when it comes to stuff like ratio, that just in like as a general understanding of the 5-to-1 ratio, for every 5 decibels that that are let through, one of them is registered.
Yeah. Well, kind of.
Yeah.
It's basically you've got your threshold here. Your threshold is like a lid, if you want, that gets put over your sound wave, and it doesn't stop the sound from getting out, but it tries to push it down so that it's quieter. The louder bits are quieter. And so if I just quickly, if you bring this down, you can see just over here. You can actually see the threshold coming down in the decibel levels.
Maybe like a foot in a trash can. And you're trying to sort of compile or compress that rubbish down.
Excellent metaphor, Chris.
To a certain level. Thank you. So the headroom that you would gain from that would be space for more rubbish.
Indeed, because we love adding rubbish to our mixes.
Yes, absolutely. Tons of rubbish.
Tons of rubbish. Right. Okay. The ratio, as Luke was saying. So if we have the threshold down at -12 dBFS, for every 5 decibels that the sound goes over the threshold, it compresses that down so that only 1 decibel of that goes above it, which just keeps the louder bits quiet. So yeah, okay, that's the threshold and the ratio. Shall we look at the attack and release?
The understanding that I hold of attack and release is that, say if you were recording a guitar, the attack would be the initial strum or the texture of the strum of the guitar, and the resonance of the note that would follow would be measured in release.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
You are indeed correct.
Obviously, just like release just generally fading away, but then this is when we add the compressor, which diminishes that final sort of come down.
So when you turn up the attack or the release of each, does that compress it more, or does that improve the volume or the value of each?
It doesn't compress it more. All it does is the attack demonstrates the time it takes for the compressor to start working.
Right.
So it's measured here in milliseconds. You can drag that all the way up to 200 milliseconds there, and that would take a very, very long time. Well, not a very, very long time. But
so it wouldn't.
It would take 200 milliseconds.
In essence, it would improve the effect of the attack, because you would hear more of the attack before the compressor kicked in.
Yeah, obviously it depends on what sort of instrument you're looking at and what you want to actually compress. For example, if you want to get the attack of a cymbal, but not so much what follows.
You never really hear the attack of a cymbal, but like...
Okay, well, the attack of a snare drum.
Or on the bell of a cymbal, you could hear that.
Okay, a bell.
Yeah.
Look at the bell. So we attack the bell of a cymbal, but you want to keep the attack in and compress the whatever follows. So the sustenance of that of that note.
That'll do, I think.
Yeah. And then the release is how quickly the compressor stops working. Again, it goes all the way up. It goes higher, this one actually. It goes up to
Yes.
5,000 milliseconds. But for the purposes of today, we're just going to keep them down at 10 milliseconds. Keep them nice and sharp.
Not so juicy.
Not so juicy, no. We're going to be using a 5-to-1 5-to-1 in the ratio of the compressor. You can go higher. The ratio, basically, obviously, the higher you go, 30-to-1, it means that every 30 decibels above for every 30 decibels that goes above the threshold, only 1 decibel will remain, which means we're losing 29 decibels. That is correct mathematics. Okay, but that's obviously a really, really intense. What's the word? That's
you don't
too much.
You don't need to do that, no.
But that's where compression becomes more of an effect.
Yeah, in artists such
then
as
Lil Wayne,
David Guetta.
David Guetta.
In a massive
Drake.
way. In a massive way. David Guetta.
So yeah, for the purposes of this
Needs to learn this shit.
this little tutorial, if you want, we're just going to be using a 5-to-1 because it's not too much and it's not too little.
It's
It's
necessary.
just right.
Well, it's a little bit over the standard amount that I would use anyway. But I mean,
Okay,
depends how much you go over by.
we'll drop it by. Okay, no, we'll just keep it on 5. Right, okay, so we'll keep it on 5. 5-to-1. Now, what we're going to want to do is, to start off with, you want to start off with your threshold at 0, which means you're not doing anything. There is no threshold at the moment. It's on, it's on the maximum that it can be.
It
Now.
is.
When we play this, you can hear. We're just using a drum beat for the purposes of this demonstration. Now I'm just gonna.
But then, as we reduce the threshold, you can see on this little gain reduction meter here that, well, when it kicks in, that it is in fact reducing this track by about 2 to 3 decibels. So
And you'll see it affects the sound on the little monitor they give you there.
Yeah, that's how you know that it's working. This is the gain reduction here. This is how much you're reducing the highest levels of the dynamic range.
and if we were to stop talking, then you could actually tell the difference. If John, maybe you'd like to put it up and then put it down again.
Okay, yeah, right. So this is it without any compression at all.
And you can clearly tell there's less sort of, I don't know, more like less background noise, as it were. Sort of, you can just,
It's generally quieter.
and the release is just sort of lessening that sort of unneeded surplus
Obviously,
noise.
with the ratio a little bit higher, you'll hear what the threshold does in a different value.
So you can hear, particularly on those, are they snares, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just, it sounds very overly compressed in it, and it's this is where it starts to become an effect when you're using it at this sort of levels. If we drop it back down again to 5-to-1, you can hear the snare obviously a lot more defined and a lot more realistic.
It's a little bit less of a placebo, more of a painkiller.
Indeed. Okay.
But then to make up from the lost decibels, we actually add on the gain,
Yeah.
which essentially reduces the indicator on the gain reduction.
So what's happening at the moment is we're dropping our whole track by 3 to 4 decibels. I would say the maximum is probably about 4. So what we need to do to compensate for this is to increase the gain by 4 decibels. So we go up to 4, and that raises the volume of the overall mix up by 4, which brings up the quieter, the the lower points of our dynamic range and decreases the highest points of the dynamic range. So, and if you keep compressing and keep going at it like this, you'll eventually come to what's known as a brick wall. When something is so compressed that it's described as a brick wall, it means that if you look at these sound waves here, all of these would be at the same level. So this quieter bit here would be louder,
Yep.
and this loud bit here would be quieter.
Yeah.
So they'd all be evened out, but you'd still get the differences in velocity.
Mhm.
You'd still hear the changes and the differences in velocity.
Yes, indeed.
So you don't lose anything from the track. You're simply compressing it so that you can keep it at a manageable level, indeed.
I concur.
And I think we've covered compressing there. Do you want to look at? We can look at some limiting.
Yes. And what is a limiter?
A limiter is basically just a more extreme version of a compressor.
Where in a compressor you will have the ratio at which you are compressing a track or a waveform. With a limiter, it's not so much a case of numbers. It's an infinite amount. So whereas here we have 30 to 1, with a limiter you'll have infinity to 1.
So if we just put the limiter on here and then drag the threshold down, you can see here it basically just stops any noise going above that level.
It's
Just completely shelves it.
yeah, a bit more of a rigid.
Yeah, rigid shelf. Not a very straight shelf, but.
I mean, there are certain plugins on Logic that are called just limiters, and I mean they're good for making things like, I don't know, dubstep if you wanted to, or you know.
So if we just bypass this, so that turns off the compressor there. We will. Where am I looking? Right, here we go. Right.
Yeah, it's the same sort of principles as a compressor, only you eradicate the idea of the ratio, I guess, because it's no longer about that.
So all you're really doing, essentially, is just bringing everything down. If you bring it down so low, you're actually just quietening the whole track. But essentially what it does is it doesn't cut off the top end of the notes. It just pushes them down all the way. So it is more like, instead of the metaphorical trash can that Chris was speaking about earlier, we're now looking at more of a, I don't know, what would you...
One of those things that crushes cars.
Okay, yeah.
A compactor.
A compactor. Something that...
It's an extreme trash can crusher.
Yeah, there is...
Keeps it down, presses it down and keeps it down.
Yeah. And it will not go above that threshold that you set.
So that, we've got more space than we could ever dream of.
Indeed. Okay, that's all, I think. Thank you for listening.